I don't see him. Did it go away?
Whoever y'all just let in, I don't even see on the screens anymore.
He left, but it showed a picture of him and it was him,
Okay.
but he's gone now. Okay, he's coming back in a
there
right
he is.
now.
We're still missing Jerry, right?
Yes.
Worker.
There we go. I had on my happy hour background still.
And Carmen. We don't see Carmen, right? So we're just missing Carmen and Jerry. All right, let me call Jerry. Do you want to call Carmen?
Yeah, and yeah.
So did everyone in Austin survive the Snowmageddon? Everyone's okay?
I think so.
I think everybody knows, but just for our new folks, we are streaming live on YouTube right now. So just a reminder.
Well, on YouTube, folks can push, through their pictures if they're in Austin of all the snowmen I've been seeing on my Facebook.
Were there a number of inches that fell? I did see big snowmen. I'm like, that's a lot. I used to live up north. That takes a lot of snow to make that type of snowman.
I didn't see any reports on the actual how much fell inch-wise, but it was quite a bit.
I liked your snowman best, Adam.
Well, I'll have to give credit to Shari. She's the one that was really focused on the snow.
She did it, and she did a fabulous job, as only she can do.
All right, the time is now by my iPhone 10:03, and I'm calling this meeting to order. All directors, please unmute yourself for roll call. With our agenda posting, we've invited members of the public to view our broadcast of the executive committee meeting, which is live on YouTube, as Charlie just said. We've also provided instructions on how to sign up to speak at today's meeting. Sign-ups were available until 5 p.m. yesterday. Members of the public will speak after agenda item 3 and will remain in Zoom waiting rooms until it's their turn. They will have 3 minutes to speak. After that time, I will cut them off unless they're just wrapping up. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made available to the public. At this time, I will call to order Mr. Apfel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Brooker.
Here.
Mr. Crane.
Here.
Mr. Dawson.
Here, I'm here, sorry.
Ms. Miranda Firth.
Here.
Mr. Flores. I think he'll be joining us shortly. Mr. Ginn.
Here.
Ms. Harrison also will be joining us shortly. Ms. Humphrey.
Here.
Mr. Kolodowski.
Here.
Justice Learman.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Present.
Ms. Miller. I saw her there. Mr. Naylor.
I beg your pardon, present.
Thank you.
Here.
Ms. Rowe.
Here.
Mr. Sorrells.
Here.
Ms. St. Ives.
Here.
Mr. Vasquez.
Here.
Mr. Wester.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Apfel. And at this time, with everybody's permission, we're going to take Justice Learman out of order. She has another commitment. So we'll hear our report now out of order from Justice Lehrman. Justice Lehrman, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I want to start off by thanking everybody, of course, the staff at the bar who always does such a wonderful job. And during this very difficult, challenging time for all of us, professionally and personally, on behalf of the court, we want to thank you all and the other members of the executive committee who give so much. And like I said, it's always amazing what you all do, but during this period of time, it's particularly impressive. So thank you all. As you all know, all of our justices were reelected in November. Justice Rebecca Huddle was appointed to replace Justice Paul Green, who I think is going to be the subject of some discussion later today, and the court is very grateful for that. We are continuing our remote work in terms of our conferences and oral argument, and we will, you know, we're just monitoring the situation with the health authorities to figure out how long that needs to continue. And hopefully with the vaccine here, it won't be too long. But having said that, I know that I was talking to a good friend of mine whose parents just had the vaccine, and it will take at least 2 months for that, you know, process to be done so that they don't have to be fearful of getting sick. And of course, and they're some of the first persons who've taken the vaccine. So I'm afraid we still have a while to go. Since the last update at the September Board of Directors meeting, we have issued 5 more emergency orders. At the Board of Directors meeting in the next week or so, I will give more specific direction about those, but know that they have to do with evictions, the eviction pleading requirements, the Texas Eviction Diversion Program, our general order, which is still requiring judges to take all reasonable efforts to conduct proceedings remotely. We also are dealing with the issue of virtual proceedings and jury trials. We have created a committee that is comprised of 20 people, judges, experts, jurists, who are looking into the whole issue. It's called the Remote Proceedings Task Force. The Judicial Council had recommended that the court remove any barriers to continuing remote online court proceedings and court innovations developed as a result of the pandemic. And so in response, we've established the Remote Proceedings Task Force. And it, again, is 20 judges, lawyers, and court personnel from across the state to make recommendations to the court with regard to what we should keep and what we should not keep. The task force will be led by Chief Justice Christopher and Judge Miskell. As you know, the bar exam has been a big issue. We've administered it twice, not in the usual July timeframe, once in September at different hotels throughout Austin, and the second one in October online. The BLE, Board of Law Examiners, met yesterday to discuss how to administer the February bar exam in light of the recent reports that this more infectious variant of the virus has made it to Houston. And of course, that has the concerns that it's going to be spread more widespread, you know, it'll affect more people on a more widespread basis. And so we're in the process of figuring out what we're going to do about that. It's even been indicated by some experts that the hotels are not even safe enough right now because of this variant strand. In addition to this administrative work, we've been very busy on the rules front. As I'm sure most of you know, in August, in response to Senate Bill 2342, we approved amendments to the expedited action and discovery rules. That's going to, there's 3 main categories of that. First, we increased the thresholds from 100,000 to 250,000. And we also changed what's included in those amounts and that would apply to the expedited actions process and level 1 discovery. The second main change is that we increased the number of oral deposition hours in level 1 from 6 to 10 to 20 hours. And we didn't make any changes to the paper discovery limits in level 1 because of our third main change, which is to require mandatory disclosure in lieu of the current request for disclosure process. And again, I can talk more specifically about that in the next few weeks. Our public comment period closed December 1st, and we received something in the area of 120 comments. And of course, we're going through those very carefully. As you all know more than anyone, we in October ordered a referendum on the disciplinary rules, and that will take place on February 2nd. So I'm going to cut it short. I know that we have a lot of other business today, but I will go into more detail in the next several weeks. But remember that the main point that we all 9 of us want to communicate is how much we appreciate every one of you and what you're doing for the citizens of our state with regard to that very important rule of law. And we appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Lehrman. Does anybody have any questions of Justice Lehrman? Yeah, so no questions. Justice, thank you very much for your time and appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to remarks from the general public. Action item number 3. At this time, we would like to welcome any members of the public who have signed up to speak. Members of the public will remain in the Zoom waiting room until it's their turn. I will address you to indicate that you may begin. Each individual will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I will notify you when your time is complete. And I believe we have one public member, Ms. Parks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Parks, are you ready?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ms. Parks. The floor is yours.
Can I ask one question, please?
Sure.
Before my time starts, since I am just one comment, is it okay if I take a little bit of extra time? I understand if you say no, but.
Well, we've got a large agenda today. So if you can, keep it as close to 3 minutes as you can, okay?
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I'm here to speak for the public in regards to the number 20 on your agenda. It's the Justice Leadership Group, which was a group that was established out of an event that happened with some comments that were said at your September, and they were addressed at your September 25th meeting. And this organization is supposed to create diversity, equality, and inclusion and initiatives, to the board so that we can, pursue the diversity and equality within the system so that all lawyers have an opportunity to be on the board of committees, on the committee boards. And I filed a grievance on a couple of lawyers that have violated my constitutional rights and my due process of law, and have actually created intimidating court spaces to deny me access to the courts because of their wrongdoings. And when I filed the grievance, I believe that the state bar interfered with that process in the protection of these attorneys, which is John Browning and Jerry Alexander. They are very active within your organization. They are on the committee, and my grievance got overlooked. And they even said that they could not communicate with me by telephone. And they actually dismissed some of my grievance based on statute of limitation, which they dismissed, which my original grievance, which was dismissed because I filed it like on the day, but during COVID, a lot of restrictions where you could not scan in documents, you couldn't, do a lot of things, by getting things, uploaded on the system. And so there was a lot of restrictions, and Ms. Willings actually said that I had additional time because of the Supreme Court orders. Well, they actually dismissed my grievance based off of not getting the documents in on time, with me thinking that I had additional time. Ms. Willings has not returned any of my phone calls, emails, or anything, nor has Ms. Reynolds. returned any of my phone calls or anything throughout the process, so we can go over some of the things that happen within the grievance process. I've also left a message for Trey Apple to give me a call, and he is not either. And so this is a showing by them not wanting to communicate with me that the state bars executives are protecting these lawyers and lawyers that are actively involved. And they also said that the grievance committee that would be reviewing my grievance before it was dismissed, they actually said that it was going to be looked at by a diverse committee. Well, after review, I'm in the DFW area, and after review of the individuals and the lawyers and the public members that are on this particular committee, they're all white male. There's a very selected amount, if any, Black men, Black lawyers, or Black women.
3 minutes are up. I need you to wrap it up.
Okay, and so basically what I'm saying is these committees are not very diverse, which is misleading to the public. And then on top of that, they have some public members that are African Americans, but I don't feel that they are in the representation of the community. And this is why this world is the way it is. There's injustices within the system, and there's people within the system that interfere with the process, which is unfair to others. And it's not fair to discipline one lawyer on certain actions, but then you don't discipline another lawyer. So there's inconsistencies in your disciplinary process, which is unfair to other lawyers, and it's unfair to the public. And they use these positions that they have to intimidate others and harass other lawyers to get what they want in court, which is not fair to us.
You've now gone a minute over. I'm afraid
I'm
I have to cut you
sorry.
off right now.
Thank
Okay?
you so much, Mr. McDougall. I appreciate it.
No
And
problem. Paulus.
I
Thank you
really
very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Okay. Just a little housekeeping for the record. I need to place on the record that Mr. Alexander is in court. He has an excused absence, and past TYLA President Victor Flores is now online with us. So he's now part of our committee again. Okay. With that, I guess I will move to my report, and I will try to keep mine as quick as I possibly can. The big thing we have coming up is the rules referendum of 2021. The voting is scheduled to start February 2nd and ending at 5 p.m. on March 4th. A lot of work has gone into these, a lot of hard work by the CDRR and our board, and they reflect a significant amount of input from the lawyers of Texas. While we're in the midst of a major push to publicize these proposals through CLE reforms, bar journals, bar events, mass emails, informational videos, social media, updates online, we're emphasizing the importance of attorneys exercising their right of self-governance. One of the great things we have by being the Bar of Texas is that we still maintain our right of self-governance. And as lawyers, we get the vote. The first of our CLEs took place on January 5th. It was an success with over 1,200 lawyers watching. I will be presenting another one on January 14th, and it's my understanding we have about 1,600 lawyers now that are signed up. This includes 1 hour of ethics CLE, if you watch this, on the proposed rules, and it will have a live question and answer session where members of the CDRR and counsel, Brad Johnson, will answer the questions from the participants. It's a very educational, and we have received positive feedback. Our chair, Charlie Ginn, did a great job as moderator on the first one, and I'm hoping I can only do as good as he did when I do mine on the 14th. Also, we will have 2 more on January 26th and February 9th. As I stated, I will be doing the one on the 14th. Sylvia Firth, our president-elect, will be doing one of the 2 remainings, as will Wendy Adele Humphrey will be moderating the other one. Chelsea has sent you emails to the links to register, and registration is required. I encourage each and every one of you on this committee to attend one of those CLEs, those webinars, so you can be better educated. Just so you know, our outreach has also included presentations to the SBOT Council chairs, the Kurt B. Henderson American Inns of Court, local bars and young lawyers associations in Texarkana, Fort Worth, Fort Bend, Austin, Wood County, Midland, Waco, and many other places, including presentations to the El Paso, Houston, Navarro County bars and the state bars local local leaders conference speaker series. We owe special thanks to the CDR members, Louis Kennard, Claude Deluxe, Vincent Johnson, and Amy Burnson for their volunteering so much time to speak and working on these, and Brad Johnson for spearheading so much of the work. Please remember, we posted a variety of rules, vote educational materials, talking points for directors and board effect. Please help us spread the word about the rules vote and encourage your colleagues to vote. Task forces I have going on. The Courthouse Access Badge Work Group, which is run by David Sergi. This thing's been meeting about every 2 weeks. We've been making a lot of progress, and hopefully we will have something soon to bring forward to our board, and we might have hopefully get it into the legislative process in 2021. The Task Force on Public Protection, Grievance Review, and Client Security Fund is chaired by Judge Michael Fields out of Houston. We've been meeting regularly. The base part of what we've been doing right now is basically educating the committee as to what the rules are, who does what, who the players are in the grievance proceedings. We are looking at, after this year, starting a thing basically where we have almost like a public hearing kind of thing through Zoom, where lawyers will be able to call in and make comments and give us their opinions. Hopefully we will have a final report presented to the board by the April board meeting. Another one that I had that I was trying to get together would be one on advertising review. As many of you know, we do seem to have a customer service issue with advertising review. I'm not saying Gene Major and his people don't do a tremendous job, and I personally believe they're overworked over there, but we do get a lot of complaints, at least I know myself and Sylvia and many others have, about the, for anything, lack of better terms, customer service. Yolanda is working on that, and we will probably be coming to the board in April now, asking to put that committee together just to review the customer service practices and stuff, unless we get something put together early enough to get it on this. Finally is the Together We Dine program that we put together. Well, I say we put together, that's Rob Crane, that's not no we. Rob Crane and the Dallas Bar Association started this, and we've basically taken their program and put it together. We've had an event on December 9th in District 5. Our next event will be District 1 on January 28th. We've now had it approved for 1.25 hours of CLE, and that's going to be ethics hours. Remember, the goal is we're going to offer this to every lawyer in Texas to attend this. It's free of charge. They can attend, get an hour and a quarter of CLE out of it also in ethics. And I'm hoping that many of our lawyers in Texas will take advantage of this. The final action will be item B, and this is to discuss and consider approval of the minutes of the March 26, 2020 Executive Committee meeting. With that, that's where I'm at, that we have this action item. And so I guess I'll make a motion that we approve. Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. The item passes. And with that, I have completed the president's report. The next item we have will be the report of the executive director, Mr. Trey Apfel. Mr. Apfel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members of the executive committee. Happy New Year to you. I'm pleased to report that the state bar remains fully operational with the exception of in-person meetings. The majority of staff continue to work remotely, and visits to the facilities are limited to essential business only. Despite that, our staff continues to work together cohesively and is more committed than ever to the state bar's mission. Many of you ask me from time to time, in fact, leading up to this call, how is staff doing? And I genuinely appreciate that concern, and I pass that concern on to our staff. I let them know that you ask about them, that you care about them, that you support them, because it's important always, but especially in these times when we're working under these challenging conditions along the way. I have held several all staff meetings via Zoom, and I've also been hosting a series of small group meetings with our staff to maintain relationships with staff members and keep the lines of communication open. These meetings are not necessarily always about business. These meetings sometimes devolve into family, cooking, hobbies, exercise, whatever it may be. But those are some of the things that we try and engage our staff in so that we can make sure that everybody's doing okay. And we always ask them, if you need anything, please tell us. And there have been some occasions where folks have reached out to us and we've been able to provide them the help that they have needed. So I'm very proud of our staff. They do an incredible job. I want to thank Justice Lehrman and the court for their support because they are they're at the helm, so to speak, every day, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of their team. A happy piece of news from the holidays is that our staff was able to help 21 families from across Texas this year with Walmart gift cards using money from our events budget, staff donations, and funds raised by Texas Access to Justice Foundation Executive Director Betty Bayi Torres. Thank you, Betty. And she was able to do this with the help of legal aid lawyers and the judges and staff at the 13th Court of Appeals. This was in lieu of the regular giving of gifts to needy families that we normally do through the Holiday Party Basket fundraiser, which had to be canceled this year, obviously, because of the pandemic. So kudos to our staff who spearheaded this effort, to all of those who contributed to the effort, and to Betty for her identifying these families for us so that we could make a difference in some people's lives. We've been keeping busy with regular work along with special projects, obviously, like providing staffing assistance to President McDougal's task forces and also President-elect Barunda Firth's task force and work group. We're very pleased and impressed with the work that these task forces are doing. And I want to thank our staff for making sure that the task forces and work groups have the necessary resources and tools that they need in order to carry out their particular mission. Our Texas Bar CLE events scheduled through March 31st will be held online or via webcast format. We want to resume in-person CLEs and meetings, but we will do so only when it is safe for our attendees and staff. We are keeping close contact with the court to make sure we coordinate our time frame and timelines with theirs. For that reason, we do not yet know whether we will have in-person events this spring or summer. We will be deciding in the coming weeks whether those events, including our State Bar annual meeting, will be held in person or virtually. We are continuing to extend the MCLE deadlines through February 2021 so that every Texas attorney can benefit from an extension during COVID-19 if needed. And a word about our Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, if I may. As you might expect, many lawyers have been struggling during the pandemic and during this very unusual time of increased isolation and anxiety, particularly during the holiday season. And not surprisingly, Chris Ritter and his team at TLAP have stepped up to meet the challenges. TLAP continues to maintain a webpage full of resources for people struggling with a mental health issue or needing recovery support. This is accessible through the State Bar's COVID-19 webpage at texasbar.com/coronavirus or through the TLAP website at tlaphelps.org. TLAP has put together around over 20 programs involving attorneys and mental health experts in this area, related to a variety of topics faced by attorneys in recovery and those dealing with anxiety and depression and other mental health disorders. And lastly, with regard to TLAP, they have been putting together a Wellbeing Wednesday support video since the pandemic started. In order to better serve our members, TLAP has also started a monthly virtual speaker series of lawyers and law students sharing their recovery stories. So we ask that you please follow TLAP on social media at TLAP Helps and share their posts so that their resources reach as many attorneys, judges, and law students as is possible. A quick update on the COVID-19 court guidance. In December, the State Bar sent a message to all attorneys reminding them of the COVID-19 court protocols put into place by the Supreme Court and the Office of Court Administration. OCA has reiterated that trial judges in district, county, justice, and municipal courts must not hold in-person proceedings in any matter unless the trial judge has used all reasonable efforts to conduct the proceeding remotely. This is mandated by the Texas Supreme Court's 29th emergency order and is required regardless of whether a city or county has approved an operating plan to the contrary. Also, unless local administrative judges and presiding judges of municipal courts recertified their in-person operating plans before January 1, 2021, courts in their localities may not hold any in-person proceedings. Details on these instructions, other court guidance, and local operating plans are on the OCA's website at txcourts.gov. And if our members have a complaint about a judge not following the Supreme Court order, OCA guidance, or the county or city operating plan for in-person proceedings, they should contact the regional presiding judge in their area. And then lastly, Mr. President, as a point of personal privilege, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the events of this last week. Last Wednesday was a horrible day in our history. I personally condemn the violence against our Capitol and against our government. And I am certain that each of you share in those thoughts and feelings. Our role as an organized, integrated bar is undeniable, and that is to preserve and protect the rule of law and educate the public on the basic tenets of that rule of law. And I am reminded of the oath that we take as lawyers to do just that. And it is that oath that makes our profession different from any other profession. We must learn from last week's events why we take that oath and why we make that pledge. And we cannot ever underestimate the role and importance that the legal profession plays in a civilized and democratic society. Thank you, Mr. President. That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Outfeld. Does anybody have any questions or comments for the Executive Director? If there are no comments, we'll move on to item number 6, the report from the Chair of the Board, Mr. Charlie Ginn. Mr. Ginn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. It's so great to see everybody. I will keep my report very brief. The District Director newsletters were emailed to constituents in November. They include news about the 2021 rules vote. If you haven't registered for that, please do. It's very educational. I think you'll really get a lot out of it. I know that our president, Mr. McDougall, is going to host the next one. He'll do a great job. And I think Wendy Adele Humphrey and I think Mr. Steve Naylor are hosting the next two. Please tune into those. The board's work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the upcoming president-elect and district director races, new member benefits, and other state bar updates are also included in that letter. Thank you for working with our staff to get these sent. This is an important part of our communications outreach. The next correspondence from the board to the districts will be an e-blast. That's going to go out in February. The staff are going to be reaching out to the directors after the January board meeting to complete those mailings. We have a board chair race that starts in January. The deadline has passed for second-year directors to submit their letters of intent. We did receive letters from 5 candidates, and they're all excellent people. They're excellent candidates. Christina Davis of Tyler, Adam Schrammick of Austin, David Sergi of San Marcos, Diane St. Ives of Houston, and Santos Vargas of San Antonio have all submitted their letters of intent. The candidates will be announced formally at the January board meeting. At that meeting, the board will consider and approve the method of voting to be used for the chair of election at the April meeting. You can choose between raising your hands or doing a secret ballot. I'm not sure that we've ever done it any way other than secret ballot, but the board will have that option. Thank you to all 5 of you for submitting your names and servant leadership. The implicit bias training, the special called meeting on July 27th, the board voted to require all members of the board to complete the implicit bias training. We have scheduled a workshop to be presented by Dr. Aaron Reeves, a national provider of implicit bias training, from 8:30 to 10:30 on Thursday, January 21st. The workshop will not include board action or discussion or deliberation of state bar business. To attend this training, you'll need to register through the GoToWebinar link that the staff has emailed all directors. The deadline to register is this Friday, January the 15th. If you have any issues with registering, as always, please reach out to Chelsea and Jennifer. They are the wizards of this, and they will take care of you, and they will make sure that we get this taken care of. April the 2021 board meeting will be virtual. Stop me if you've heard this, but COVID is not slowing down right now. So we're going to keep doing this virtually until it's safe. The associated committee meetings will also be held in a virtual format. We'll keep you posted about the status of our June meeting. I know we are all anxious to see each other. We miss all of you. It's great to see your faces even on Zoom this morning. With that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ginn. Does anybody have any questions of our chairman of the board? Comments? With that, we'll move on to the report from our president-elect, Sylvia Barunda Firth. Ms. Firth, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President McDougall. And before I start my report, I also want to echo the thanks that Mr. Apfel gave to the staff. The staff has done an exemplary job during these really difficult situations, and they have provided wonderful support for the task forces that we are working in, the work groups. So thank you to the staff. So my report today is going to be a general report, and then there's the action item at the end, which relates to the budget, and you all should have received the budget information in your packet. And when we get there, I'll ask for some action, but let's get started on just the general information. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force has met twice, on November 12th and on December 10th. And during the first meeting was just kind of a get to know one another meeting and just orientation with regard to the task force purposes and goals. And we learned about the existing state bar diversity initiative. It's always been my concern that people believe that the state bar hasn't been doing any of these things. So we continue to revisit the fact that the state bar has a long history of working on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that members of the task force are well aware of those initiatives that have already taken place. The task force was asked to brainstorm and submit ideas, and those were reviewed during our December meeting. We are going to break up into subcommittees in the areas of CLE education, communications, pipeline issues, administrative issues, and implicit bias. The next meeting will be held on January 28th, and the task force is also going to take part in implicit bias training on February 19th by the same trainer that's providing the board training. As I think everybody knows, on October 28th, we held the State Bar of Texas Focus and on Diversity in the Listening Session, which was very well received. The virtual panel discussed and moderated by past President Lisa Tatum brought together Texas lawyers and bar leaders to discuss the impact of systemic racism and recent events on the legal community, the role of the state bar, including the limitations on bar activity under state law and federal court decisions, and the responsibility of lawyers as advocates and officers of the court. The session was accredited for 0.75 hours of CLE credit, and it's still available to watch on demand for free on the Texas Bar CLE website. The Committee Review Task Force. The Committee Review Task Force has been appointed to review the bar's standing committees. The State Bar Act requires that the State Bar Board to conduct a comprehensive review of the standing committees biannually to determine two things: whether there is a continued need for each committee and whether there is unnecessary overlap of committee activities. So the task force will meet with each of the committee chairs and review the activities of each committee for the past 2 years. And the committee review process has, in the past, the committee review process has led to some positive changes to the standing committee structure, and we look forward to another thorough review by the Committee Review Task Force. Our goal is to complete the report by the April board meeting. We will outline our recommendations to the Executive Committee and the board at that time. The members on the task force are Wendy Adele Humphrey, Charlie Ginn, Michael Smith, James Wester, and I serve as the chair. So the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee met on December 8th virtually to hear from representatives of the State Bar divisions and departments, and the committee approved the fiscal year 2021-22 budget as was presented as part of your packet. If it's approved by the Executive Committee today and the board at the January meeting, this proposed budget will be published in the March 2021 issue of the Texas Bar Journal. I'm going to give you some just highlights. If you all have any questions and need further information, Tracy's online to give that detail. But here's some of the highlights. $288,800 is an annual transfer to the Texas Law Center Building Fund, which is a capital projects fund used to replace capital equipment at the Law Center. $500,000 annual transfer to the bar's technology fund, which is a capital projects fund used to maintain and advance technical hardware and software by the State Bar. Another $500,000 annual transfer to the Client Security Fund. The Client Security Fund is considered a special revenue fund used to provide discretionary grants to clients who've been harmed by lawyers' theft or failure to refund an unearned fee. This fund is intended to protect the integrity of the legal profession. We have some recommendations for the board commitments. The total amount available for commitment by the State Bar Board is $4,333,072. Of this amount, $3,366,405 comes from excess funds from fiscal year 2019-2020 financial operations, and $966,667 is a designation of 2 prior board commitments. And after hearing from the executive director and the State Bar staff, the Budget Committee plans to make the following recommendations to the board at the January meeting for the commitment of the available funds. Commit $1,500,000 to replenish the level of minimum reserves from 2.1 months to 2.5 months for operating expenditures, bringing the total amount held in reserves to $9,140,350. Commit $250,000 to raise the balance maintained in the legal reserve account. This commitment will increase the reserve for possible payments to outside legal counsel for the State Bar of Texas and bring the total reserve to $350,000. Commit $25,000 to raise the balance maintained as a reserve for future presidential initiatives to $200,000. Commit $400,000 to the Client Security Fund. Commit $114,674 to fund payment for additional insurance expenses. Commit $15,000 to host the ABA Young Lawyers Division Summit event. Commit $515,000 for the ATJF Student Loan Repayment Assistance Program. Commit $513,398 to the Texas Bar's Technology Fund. Commit $500,000 for operations of the Lavaca building. This commitment will maintain a 2-year reserve account for operating expenses associated with the purchase of 1415 Lavaca. The anticipated expenses include utilities, security, maintenance, and other operating expenses. commit $500,000 for renovation and repair of the Lavazza building. The exact amount needed for the necessary renovations and the repairs is as yet undetermined. However, this reserve will provide funds to cover the expenses as they become necessary. And as I said before, if you have any questions and you need more detail, Tracy Jarrett is available to answer those questions. Anybody have any questions? If not, on behalf of the Budget Committee, I move that the State Bar's proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22 be approved for presentation to the board and for publication in the March 2021 issue of the Texas Bar Journal.
I'll second.
All right, that cut that out. We have a second from our chair. All directors who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. There's no opposed, so the motion passed. Is there any other comments or anything, questions of President-elect Firth?
Can we get a quick update on the building purchase since the last time many of us have heard it's been?
Mr. Crane, we're going to address that in executive session. Got it? Okay. Next, we have item number 8, report from immediate past president Randy Sorrells. Mr. Sorrells?
My report is very limited, only to the extent that we talk about the ongoing president's race. As you know, we have 2 candidates. And since I don't think Jerry's going to make this meeting, I will tell you that they are both campaigning remotely the best that they can. And right now we look for hopefully a good voter turnout based upon the conditions that are presented. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrells. Any questions or comments from past President Sorrells? We'll move then to item number 9, Executive Committee, Nominations and Elections. Again, I call on you, Mr. Sorrells. Mr. Sorrells?
Yep. Okay. Sorry. I went on mute. Yep. I gave it. I tried to wrap it up in those 2. So
very good. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it.
That's okay. And then I do want to thank the staff also. They have done an amazing job as well. I thought Sylvia Trey said words that were appropriate, but I don't think enough words could be appropriate for as much as they've done.
I couldn't agree with you more. From my position, Jennifer and Chelsea is what's keeping our bar afloat. But I know there's so many more behind the scenes that are doing this and keeping us up and running. And I too wish to thank them for everything that they've done. We'll next move on to Policy Manual Subcommittee. Mr. Schrammick.
Great. Thank you very much, President McDougall, for inviting me today to the Executive Committee. I was asked to come and just kind of present on the work that the Policy Committee has been doing over the past several weeks, probably a few months now, and kind of what the schedule is looking like for potential votes that would be upcoming. As you may recall, after our special board meetings, there were 2 issues that were put forward to us. The first was to come up whether or not we could come up with some sort of a code of conduct. We don't have one that really applies to the board members. The only code of conduct we have is for events, where if someone acts up at an event, we have the ability to oust them from the event. But we didn't have a true code of conduct. And so we did quite a bit of investigation. We looked primarily at examples of codes of conduct from nonprofits. A lot of us have experience from being on nonprofit boards, and also looking at codes of conduct applicable to publicly traded companies, which a lot of times will have independent outside directors, right? And so what we've done is, through that work, and also with the help of Yolanda Cortez Meres, who took the lead on this, we've come up with a draft code of conduct that will be looked at again. We looked at it at our last meeting, and it'll be looked at again coming up in our January 19th meeting. And the hope would be that after our January 19th meeting, the Policy Committee will have recommended a code of conduct to be adopted by the board. At the January board meeting, in my update, I will simply explain this process, give some highlights about the types of issues that we've looked into, give examples of the code, and then we'll actually be distributing the code for consideration to the entire board for the next 2 or so months until we have our March board meeting. And the hope would be then at the March board meeting, if there are any issues, after having everyone been able to review it, we can address those issues and formally adopt a code of conduct. Now, while this arose from the special board meeting, And a lot of those, issues had to do with diversity, inclusion issues. The code of conduct is much broader than that. And there are some sticking issues, of course, with, a social media policy, things like that. We've been very aware of that and have been working on what I think hopefully will be a code of conduct that everyone can agree upon. And again, we may make some minor modifications in January and then the board in March. But at the end of the day, we hope to have a code passed in March. The code addresses many issues. It addresses conflicts of interest. It addresses fiduciary duties. It addresses financial issues with respect to, as you might imagine, if someone has a financial interest in a matter being voted upon by the board, they should not be participating in that decision. So it's much, much broader than its initial kind of purpose, I think, was. But it also goes hand in hand with Director Rowe's Justice and Leadership Work Group, which I've also been sitting on and participating in those meetings. Now, I know she has an update about that later on, and she'll fill you in on that work. But we've been very careful to make sure that the code of conduct and the policies that may arise out of that go hand in hand and work together, from a point of view of an enforceable code and aspirational goals. So that's what we've been focused on the one hand. The second issue we've been focused on has to do with the increased vetting of presidential candidates in order to make sure that the attorneys who vote for President-elect and the board that is asked to vote and approve the nominating committee selections have the information they know in order to make meaningful decisions. We've gone through various kind of considerations, various possible routes, one of which would be a very formalized disclosure statement, more like an application for a federal judge. Then we said, well, maybe we just need to come up with a more uniform list of questions that we make sure get asked to each individual. We still haven't landed on an approach there. We're going to talk about it again in January 19. There's a few other ideas that are being batted about. And so we don't have a recommendation there. Our goal there would be to actually have a recommendation by the March board meeting to roll out, and then to allow by the end of year board meeting, hopefully, or at least consideration of that policy recommendation. So those were the two big issues we've been working on. Of course, there are other policy committee, policy manual matters we're looking into, but those are the big ones I wanted to update on everyone and also kind of give you that timeline of how we plan to roll it out. And one thing that's very important to me is that we don't spring on the board some 15-page document and ask them to approve it and, with 2 days consideration. The process, making sure everyone has input into that process, making sure we're deliberative and we actually implement a policy that everyone's on board with, or the most people possible, is an important part of the process. And that's why I want to roll out the drafts from the policy committee and give everyone a few months to review and consider it before we even think about any sort of a vote. So that's where we are, and I'll take any questions if anyone has them.
Thank you, Mr. Schrammick. Does anybody have any questions or comments on Mr. Schrammick's report? Not hearing any, we'll move on to item number 11, the DCAP subcommittee. Mr. Steve Naylor. Mr. Naylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our report is a follow-up to the action that the board took in September. You may recall we were referred the ABA Model Rule 8.4G and this Texas Disciplinary Rule 5.08 to the DCAP Committee for study to determine whether any recommendations should be made to the board. We want to give you an update now on our progress. On November 2nd, the committee met to discuss these items. We reviewed a number of materials regarding Model Rule 8.4G, including the following: existing court challenges, transcript of our September board meeting and the public comments received from our Texas lawyers, scholarly law review articles, a review of similar policies adopted by state bars throughout the country, and attorney general opinions from 5 states. What we found was that there are so many complexities to the model rule, not only legal complexities, but also political. As you may recall, the majority of the public testimony the board heard on September 25th was in strong opposition to the rule. I'm still receiving emails in that regard. Our research shows that the rule is considered to be controversial. Nationally, only a handful of states have adopted the rule or a similar version of the rule. At the time we looked at this, there were questions about the constitutionality of the rule, including concerns about it being overly broad and vague. There are also opinions from 5 state attorney generals that indicate that the rule is unconstitutional. Alaska, Louisiana, South Carolina, Texas, and Tennessee. Based on all of these complexities, the committee voted unanimously that no further action should be taken on Model Rule 8.4G, which means our recommendation to the board is that we would not move it forward in the rulemaking process. Subsequent to that decision, a federal court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania considered a challenge to Pennsylvania's recent amendment to its disciplinary rules to implement a rule with similar language as Model Rule 8.4G. The court issued its order in December, ruling that the proposed change violated the First Amendment. As requested, the committee is also looking at Rule 5.08 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct. This rule addresses prohibited discriminatory activities in connection with an adjudicatory proceeding. We are gathering information from the Chief Disciplinary Counsel's office, including anecdotal information about what they are seeking in the disciplinary system. We have an upcoming meeting to continue looking at these issues. We will report our progress as we continue our study. Mr. President, that concludes our report, but I would like to again thank the DCAP Committee for all their hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Naylor. Does anybody have any questions or comments of Mr. Naylor? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 12, Client Security Fund. Mr. Crane, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you all may all recall, the hardest working subcommittee in the State Bar of Texas added an additional meeting on November 17th of 2020 to deal with not only some additional backlog cases, but also to address some issues on how we might be able to get through some of the backlog. And we also took up an issue of whether we should be paying the full amount of the claims made by the claimants, or whether we should change the policy so that we're paying something in the order of percentage, 80, 90% of the actual claim that's presented. As you may know, there is a limit as to the total amount any one claimant can receive, which I believe is $40,000. So we had a good discussion. Just for a quick update, we have reviewed in the neighborhood of 65 cases over this calendar year. We've accepted 36 of the claimants and have distributed $177,977.93. Our committee, Director Naylor, I would like to add, was a very good, strong voice of reason, as he always is. We chose not to make any changes as to changing the percentage of the claims that are paid, as long as claims come in under the maximum amount. We are still paying out the full amount of the claim if approved by the committee. We are continuing to work on our backlog issue with Claire Reynolds, who is an unbelievable staff person, and she puts in a lion's share of the work. Obviously, we go through and review her work, and she's going to have some suggestions for us in January on how we might be even more efficient in getting through the backlog that we have. That is my report, Mr. President.
Myself, thank you, Mr. Crane. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Crane? With that, we'll move on to item number 13, the Administration Committee. Mr. Wester, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As far as the general report goes, I have nothing to report there, but I do want to give a report on the Performance Measures and Strategic Planning Committee. As you all know, we kicked that off back in August with the retreat, and I appreciate everyone's involvement. Sherry Goldsberg is chairing this committee and continues to do a great job. We met back in December, early December of last year, to review an initial draft of the strategic plan. And we've now scheduled another meeting, and that's scheduled for later this week, January 14th, in which we will review a draft, and we will have a draft of the strategic plan and a complete report prepared for our board meeting later this month. That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. Does anybody have any questions or comments from Mr. Wester? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 14, Audit and Finance. Alistair Dawson, you have the floor.
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. President. For the 6 months ended November 30th, 2020, the general fund actual amount of net revenues over expenditures was slightly over 3.3 million, while the amount budgeted for that period was a negative 313,000. This resulted in a positive net revenue of over 3.6 million. As we anticipated at the start of the new fiscal year, total revenues compared to budgeted revenues are down by 2.2 million, while total expenditures compared to budgeted expenditures were down 5.9 million. The savings and decreased costs has completely offset the expected decrease in revenue, resulting in this $3.6 million positive variance. The majority of the decrease in revenues is from Texas Bar CLE live course fees, investment revenue, and membership dues revenue. The majority of savings is in salaries and benefits, meetings and conferences, and travel expenditures. The full financial statements and dashboard are included in the executive committee packet and are on the State Bar on our web portal that we have. Overall, the State Bar remains in strong financial position despite the challenges of the operations during the pandemic. The Audit and Finance Committee engaged McConnell and Jones LLP to complete the internal audits in accordance with the internal audit plan. The audits are in the reporting phase currently and are on track to be completed by the April board meeting. The internal audit reports will cover the sections, the Chief Disciplinary Counsel's Office, and the Public Funds Investment Act compliance. Darlene Brown, the audit director, will present the results of the internal audit during the April board meeting. The CPA firm Weaver has completed the fiscal year 2019-2020 financial audit for the State Bar. This is the first year that Weaver has completed the financial audit for the State Bar. RSM was the prior auditor. A copy of the financial audit report is included in your executive committee packet. The financial audit resulted in the bar receiving an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best opinion that we can get. Also included in your EC packet is a report from Weaver titled Report to the Board of Directors and a report titled Internal Control Letter. These reports are required by auditing standards, and their purpose is to summarize the required communications about the audit process and results to those charged with governance. The report states that Weaver encountered no difficulty during the audit and did not have any disagreements with management. The auditors identified some internal control deficiencies in their report to management. This is commonplace. Almost every time there's an audit, they have to find some internal control deficiency. One required a restatement of the beginning net position for a correction related to post-employment benefits other than pensions. Last year, the State Bar implemented the accounting standards relating to other post-employment benefits. However, Weaver identified an error with the entry used to report the liability requiring a restatement. This correction does not affect the governmental fund financial statements, and management has implemented changes to prevent this mistake or error going forward. Other less significant issues were also communicated to management and are being implemented. The completion of the financial audit in the midst of the pandemic with a new audit firm was a great effort. And let me say, kind of echoing Trey's comments earlier, this is really a kudos to Tracy Jarrett and her staff. They have done an amazing job, both in terms of running the finances of the State Bar, but also working with the auditors during this pandemic to get a clean opinion. So the staff, Tracy and her staff, have done an amazing job. If accepted by the Audit and Finance Committee, the committee will make a recommendation to the board during the January 22nd meeting regarding acceptance of the financial audit report. And Mr. President, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you or any other directors may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Dawson? Hearing none, we're going to basically take item number 15 out of order and move it further down. Let's move on to item number 16, Professional Development Subcommittee, Rebecca Brooker. Ms. Brooker, you have the floor.
Hi.
Since COVID, the State Bar of Texas has directly shown its commitment to helping Texas lawyers during this uncertain time. From June 1st, the Texas Bar CLE has provided over $3 million in free CLE events. 435,000 of those dollars are for free CLE to legal aid lawyers, and $135,000 has been awarded in scholarships to lawyers for CLEs. And again, just as a reminder, please let the attorneys in your area know that they can apply for a full or partial scholarship for all of our State Bar programs. The application process is easy, it's fast, and it's confidential. We've recently recorded the January 5th rules vote forum and the CLE on the proposed rules, which is also available for free on the Texas Bar CLE and is accredited, I believe, for 1 hour ethics credit, which is always nice. Important to note that the Texas Bar CLE has converted all live seminars to webcast format through April 15th, and it's closely monitoring the situation for the few courses that are still currently scheduled to be held in person in late April and May. Unfortunately, due to this conversion, though, as of November, the revenue for the fiscal year is down 13% from what was the targeted budget. But the good news is that our expenses are also down, so there's that. Also, Texas Bar Books has created a new website, which is texasbarpractice.com. And since the launch of Texas Bar Books has actually seen a 15% increase in subscribers to its online practice manuals. So in addition to providing just a storefront for Texas Bar Books publications, this texasbarpractice.com website is also the platform for law practice management programs and a large collection of free articles and forms and videos, which are available online. And finally, just a big thank you to Hetty and her team. They have worked so hard and pivoted and making sure that Texas Bar CLE has continued and will continue to run smoothly during this time. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Rebecca. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Rebecca? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 17, insurance member benefits. Carmen Rowe, you have the floor, or the mic, or whatever.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, President McDougall. I'm going to start with the Texas Bar Private Insurance Exchange. I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but the exchange is growing fast, and our insurance program has been growing since 2018. The number of product enrollments has increased by 92%. The major medical enrollments alone have grown by 45% during the same period. So in discussion about 2021 health insurance open enrollment, it ended December 15th, 2019. Presentations this year, which are usually conducted throughout the state, were done by 3 online Zoom webinars, which were heavily attended. They allowed us to reach more members this year, one of the very few benefits of 2020. Knowing that solos and small firms need the most help getting insurance, we developed a postcard, which most of you should have received, that synthesized the availability and the information and benefits that we provide through the State Bar of Texas, which increased the visits to our benefits website by 56%. So we're very proud of that. Talking about our subcommittee projects, this year we split the subcommittee into 3 groups to focus on the hot topics that were most relevant to our members.
Yeah.
Those include solo insurance marketing of the insurance program and to enhance awareness of our overall benefits program. So in discussing those 3 areas briefly, we have the solo insurance group, which helps solos with insurance as they struggle with accessing that information through the bar. I learned this year that even though federal government regulations allow solos to form group insurance, it's actually the Texas Department of Insurance that does not allow it. In fact, a company called Descent that was offering group insurance to solos was ordered to stop by the Department of Insurance here in Texas. This discussion will continue, and I will continue to update everyone, but at the very least, we now understand better what the limitations are for solos who want to get insurance in a group plan. One positive note about our group plan is that typically a solo has to have one full-time non-spouse employee to be eligible in Texas for a group plan. The exchange was able to negotiate with the Department of Insurance to approve them to allow spouses to be considered as full-time employees, and that's something new that the State Bar of Texas has made possible for members across the state of Texas. Insurance marketing, the postcard that I referred to earlier was a huge success, increasing again by 56%, those people coming to our website to get information about insurance and non-insurance benefits that the State Bar of Texas provides. A CLE is also being put together to educate members on the insurance and financial decisions that they can consider as attorneys with the State Bar of Texas. And last but not least is the benefit program marketing. This group modified the monthly benefits email that you should be receiving from the State Bar of Texas, as well as our social media posts relating to benefits. The overall goal is to continue to monitor the impact that we're having in making those changes to provide better information to our members about what benefits are provided by the State Bar of Texas through member benefits. The revenue for this program has been stable this year with about $500,000 in non-dues revenue being generated as of November, and this is in line with past years. At the upcoming board meeting, we will be reviewing the State Bar programs compared to other large state bars, and this will also help us to consider new things that can be offered to our members. Our committee is hardworking and aggressive about collecting information, so if you have anything that you think would be helpful in our efforts, please let us know. And I would like to thank Corey Squires, who is our State Bar liaison. He's amazing, and we couldn't do it without him. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Carmen. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Carmen? Hearing none, we'll move on to numbers 18 and 19, the Legislative Policy Subcommittee and the section representatives to the board. Ms. Emily Miller, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. President. You'll recall that the Legislative Policy Subcommittee held its public meetings in August of 2020 to consider proposals for the 2021 legislative session, which begins today at noon. So here in less than an hour. And a giant thank you again to Kaylin Laney and Christina McGuire, the ultimate pros in the legislative process, for shepherding us through that process and what is bound to be a really interesting and first impression legislative session this year. The DPS is allowing very limited admission to the Capitol, so if anyone wants to watch the proceedings, I would encourage you to go online to do that. But our sections are going to keep pressing forward with their legislative proposals, which have been previously submitted to the board. I believe that concludes my report, Mr. President, as far as the Legislative Policy Subcommittee goes.
Would you like to just go ahead and continue onto the section representatives?
Yes, thank you very much. The State Bar sections have been participating in the Audit and Finance Committee's multi-year audit plan to audit various departments and functions for the State Bar. And for the first time ever, this has included our sections. The audit primarily focused on financial processes and basic governance processes. Many of our sections have had these processes for years, so they weren't required to redevelop these, but were only asked to submit them to the auditors. The auditors have completed their information gathering in December, and we're expecting an initial draft of the audit report any day now. And overall, it went very well. The sections did understand why we were doing this and participated and cooperated with the auditors. They did get the information to the auditors in a timely manner. And we are waiting on that initial draft report to be provided anytime. It's going to be reported to the sections at the February 26th Council of Chairs meeting. And then a final report will be reported at our April board meeting. One section that we have given particular attention to is the animal law section. And you'll remember at the June meeting of the board, the section representatives placed the animal law section under official review pursuant to our new board policy manuals, policies governing sections, and they are under review until the January board meeting. I'm happy to report that the section has reconstituted their council. About 75% of the participants are new to the council, which should help reduce some of the fractious behavior, for lack of a better term, that has been going on in years past. They do have a brand new chair and vice chair and almost entirely new council members. So we're looking forward to them providing significant value to their dues paying section members, which we'll need to see after several months of that not happening. So we're hopeful. They still have an uphill battle, and I do anticipate that the section reps will decide to continue this particular section's review through this year's annual meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, and this concludes my report of the section reps.
Thank you, Emily. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Emily? Hearing none, we'll move on to section 20. Carmen, you're back up. Justice and Leadership Committee Work Group.
Thank you. Good morning again. The Justice and Leadership Work Group has met 5 times. It's comprised of 12 different individuals, members, and board of directors. The group, with the help of the Bar's Public Information Department, specifically Amy Starnes, who's amazing, put together every single written comment, every verbal comment that was made by the public as well as members from our July 2020 special meeting that was called for that purpose. We culled that information and put it together in some sort of format so that we could give effect and impact to the statements that were made by both members and the public. We've put together 4 isolated goals. Generally speaking, those goals include setting standards for officers and directors regarding race and diversity, as well as standards for public activity involving directors and executive members of the State Bar of Texas. As Adam Schrammick mentioned, he is part of this committee, which is amazing because he also is the chair of the Policy and Rules Committee that's putting together a code of conduct. And so we're making recommendations to his committee as they put those things together in hopes of collaborating to ensure that race and diversity is considered and applied in whatever appropriate means through his committee. Other goals include outreach to assist in the efforts currently being made by the State Bar of Texas to reach out to individuals to ensure diversity and inclusion in the State Bar of Texas. We've worked with Karen Chevins, who is the director of the Office of Minority Affairs. They're doing fantastic work. She did a presentation to our group to let us know how much they're doing, and we're trying to find ways to assist her group in their efforts as well. The work group is currently analyzing all of these goals, as I said, and moving forward to bring a full recommendation to the board in the coming months, hopefully before July. I would like to thank everybody who's worked on this committee and those who've contacted us from the public to our members to directors who have expressed an interest in this important issue. And we continue to want to collect the voices of our members and the public to ensure that they are heard through the State Bar of Texas. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Carmen. Anybody have any questions or comments for Carmen? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 21, MCLE Committee. John Boyce, you have the mic. John, are you here?
There we go. All right. Now, all right. I was unmuted, I thought anyway. As I think the board of directors knows, you all asked us last summer to make recommendations on a couple of issues. One, that the MCLE committee consider making implicit bias training a requirement for Texas attorneys, and that we return with a recommendation to you all. Secondly, you asked us to report back on regarding the possibility of categorizing CLE courses on the subject of mental health and substance abuse as being eligible for legal ethics and professional responsibility. I think our committee has been very diligent in that area. We appointed in late August, I think, a subcommittee to do some of the hard work of reviewing the way that it's done around the country. And they've looked at a variety of states that have an implicit bias requirement or an option, or an attorney well-being requirement or option, things like that. And the subcommittee, particularly with the very diligent help of the staff, settled on kind of 3 different models: Missouri, Illinois, and Florida. And in fact, they interviewed the director, the MCLE director of the Florida Bar, all right, and they reported back. And basically, our recommendation is that we're very proud of the quality of our CLE programs and our minimum continuing legal education requirements, and we want to maintain that. And we decided that we think it's in the interest of the Texas Bar to offer Texas attorneys the opportunity to receive ethics credit for implicit and explicit bias and for attorney wellness. So what we've done, we don't think it's in the interest of the bar for a variety of reasons to make it mandatory, but at least right now to have it as an option. And we're trying to do it in such a way to maintain our high accreditation standards. And anyway, that these programs could count towards the 3-hour portion of the ethics requirement for MCLE. So you might say it creates a pathway for these kind of programs to receive ethics credit. I want to say how conscientious everybody on this committee has been, and how reasonable and diligently people have worked to do the best thing they can. When we have meetings, everyone comes to the meetings, all right? And that's pretty unusual for an organization. Both the subcommittee meetings, and we had the big committee, they reported back to us last weekend. I think everybody was at the meeting and made some very thoughtful conduct and so comments. And so I think you ought to be proud of the service that the members of our committee have tried to render to the lawyers of Texas. I think you charged us to make a report, me probably to make a report to the board of directors in late the next board of directors meeting in January, and I'll be happy to do that. I want to compliment the staff so much for their hard work in working with us, and I think this is right now, I think this is the best way to go. So we will recommend some sort of a loose way to call it, it's like a cafeteria plan, if you will. And this is something that we will recommend to the board of directors. And it was unanimous. There was really no dissent on the committee or the subcommittee. So this is kind of what we think is the best thing for the lawyers of Texas right now. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you want to ask me.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Boyce? Hearing none, I'd like to thank you all on your committee for your hard work and everything you put into this. And with that, we will move on to item number 22, TYLA, Texas Young Lawyers. Is Brittany here? Yes, sir. Is Brittany here?
I'm here.
Thank you, Brittany.
Hi, how's everyone doing? As I'm sure y'all have seen and all the materials provided, TYLA has been extremely busy this past few months. We've launched a lot of projects and are continuing to churn out even more despite all of the complications that COVID has caused this year. I'm extremely proud of all the work TYLA has done, and I can't wait to share all of these resources with you. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to highlight a couple of the projects. Coming out probably in the next week or so, we're going to be launching the Evidence and Predicates Guide. This serves as a quick reference guide that will be like another tool that litigators can put in their trial notebook. And we're going to actually make this into a series of guides. So this first one was focused on the Texas Civil Rules of Procedure. The next will focus on the federal rules. We've also are finalizing our guide to garnishments. The purpose of that one is to assist individuals who may be experiencing garnishment of their wages, bank accounts, or other personal property by providing them information and some frequently asked questions. This one was a really cool project that we were able to partner with the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers And they provided law student interns, and they actually are the ones that researched and authored this project under the direction of David Courageous in Austin. So this was a way that we were able to help some law students that had lost their internships last summer and be able to actually turn out, get some legal experience, and provide this amazing resource that we think will help hundreds, if not thousands, of financially disadvantaged Texans. And then also we have completed our written materials for our consequences of vaping guide. This will address the physical consequences of vaping as well as all the legal and consequences from the civil perspective and the criminal law perspective. And we just signed up a vendor that's going to start filming the video content of this project. So be on the lookout for these resources coming up very soon. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Brittany, and I appreciate all the good hard work y'all do over at TYLA. Anybody have any questions or comments for Brittany?
I do, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Brittany, you guys are incredible. I don't know how y'all do it, but this year where I think the State Bar has been certainly had questions asked and wondering who's going to show up, TYLA did, and you have just been an incredible president. And thank you for taking care of Texas lawyers and the public. You guys are incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we're going to jump back to item number 15, the Ad Hoc Committee on Selection of At-Large Directors. Wendy Adele Humphrey, you have the mic.
Thank you, Larry. My apologies for being cameraless today. I'm very much under the weather, but I have not missed an exec meeting in the past. I didn't want to miss my opportunity to give you an update today. So short report. As you know, there are 4 at-large directors on the State Bar Board, and at annual meeting this June, the term will expire for my term, my position. And we do have a process for selecting the new at-large director, and it's spelled out in the board policy. So we came up with a timeline, and we had as the deadline to submit nominations to the State Bar as December the 1st. And thanks to increased promotion and marketing, we actually had 37 nominations this year, which I believe is an all-time record. So that's really great that so many people are interested in serving the State Bar of Texas. The ad hoc committee reviewed all of those nominations, and we recently met and determined that we would interview 8 of the nominated attorneys from that list of 37. So the next step is that we will conduct interviews on Zoom on February the 10th. After that, we will recommend 2 nominees to President McDougall for his consideration. He will then choose 1 nominee, and he'll submit that appointment to the board for consideration at our April board meeting. As you can imagine, this is a very competitive process, and reviewing 37 nominations, the committee can attest that we had a stellar group, and we put a lot of thought into who we selected to interview on February the 10th. Excuse me. I also do want to take this opportunity to thank those who are serving on this very important committee. We have board members Andy Edelmanzan, TYLA President Brittany Harrison, Michael Smith, and Kimberly Pack Wilson. To thank you to all of them for the time and effort they've put in it thus far and will continue to do as we make our top 2 recommendations to President McDougall. That is my short report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Wendy. Anybody have any questions or comments for Wendy? Okay, with that, we'll move on to discussion number 20, item 23. Is Ross Fisher here?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, Ross, you got it.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific to report. We'll cover it. I think John and I'll cover it in closed session.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
John Sermon, do you have a report?
We'll talk in closed session.
Very good. All right. Now, time is, come on, watch here, straight up 11:30. All right. Yes, it's 11:30. And the State Bar Board of Directors will now recess the open meeting and reconvene in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel to include discussion regarding real estate transactions for the state bar. In Section 551.072 to deliberate regarding a potential purchase of real property at 1415 Lavaca Street in Austin, Texas. And also, I believe 551.074 to deliberate regarding a personnel matter. At this time, we will have a 5-minute recess or break for our moderators, Chelsea and Jennifer, to put all the members of the 2020-2021 board, including section representatives and board liaisons, into the breakout room for the closed session. All other individuals, including non-essential staff and other guests, will remain watching the broadcast. We will notify the public when we are 5 minutes out from returning to open session. Any director who is attending by Zoom, please turn on your video so we can visually confirm your identity. If you are attending via telephone only, please note that we have to verify your identity previously. Important, please do not use the chat feature while we're in closed session for open records purposes. Okay.
Ready, Chelsea?
Yes.
there's nothing.
Larry, we should all be back in.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, recording is resumed. All right. The time is now 11:47 a.m. The open session of the Board of Directors Executive Committee meeting will now reconvene. During the closed session, only matters relating to consultations with legal counsel, including concerning pending or contemplated litigation matters, were discussed. No action was taken in closed session. And we have no action pending or to be brought forward after the closed session at this time. Is there any questions or comments before I adjourn the meeting? If there are none, the time is still 11:47 a.m. And at this time, this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you very much for attending.
Good to see everybody.
Thank y'all.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah.